I met the devotees uh, while I was traveling in South America. After I finished college and worked for some years, I collected some money, so I said I would want to travel. So I went to South America, and I was into yoga, uh, impersonalist yoga. I was a Mayavadi, and and I met devotees while doing that travel. I stayed at an ashram, and their food was not very good. So one of the members, he said, "You want to eat very well today?" It was a Sunday. And I said, "Yeah, of course. Where can we go?" I said, "For free, we can go to the Hare Krishna." And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So we went to the temple in Caracas, the temple where Srila Prabhupada visited. Um, and we didn't have an opportunity to meet anyone, because there were so many people in the temple. There was a sannyasi preaching, and there were so many people visiting. So they was distributing this fabulous prasadam. I was really happy. We got very good food that day, but no opportunity to talk and interact. And actually, honestly, I wasn't interested in sitting down and hearing the philosophy. I thought they were religious, and although I come from a very religious family, I come from a Catholic family, and actually, my family was so religious that when I was young, I expressed that I wanted to be a priest. So my father helped me and supported me, and I went to study to be a priest. Uh, I did that when I was very young with the Catholic Church, and um, so when I met the devotees, what happened with my story is that I studied to be a priest, but then when I decided I don't want to do this, I went back to my country, to Puerto Rico, and I was studying in the United States, and that is why I speak English, because I was forced to learn. Nobody in my family knew English, so I went into the university, and in the university, after maybe my first year of college, I lost my faith in God. You know, I I met people, very intelligent people, materially intelligent, and they were questioning me about my faith. Once they learned that I had been studying to be a priest, they said, "Why did you do that? That there's no sense in that." And they started questioning me. And with Christian philosophy, um, theology, I couldn't answer so many questions. And I started doubting my own faith, and Catholics are known for not studying the Bible very much. So I couldn't debate, and I started thinking, well, this is not intelligent. I mean, they're telling me all these things about God that don't make sense to me, actually. So it was very difficult for me as a young person to lose my faith in God. I mean, all my life I had this base, and all of a sudden I felt like the rug had been taken away from me, and I was left without any faith in God. So, there was almost nothing to live for in many ways. Only my political, because Puerto Rico was, because of our political status, there's a lot of politics, and only because of my political views, which I started becoming like socialist, communist, atheist, I had like a meaning to life, improve society, better distribution of wealth, and like that. All those things took up my interest. Anyway, so um, after college, I started associating with people that did yoga, and the first time I heard the word yoga, it immediately caught my attention. It seems like something interesting, something like hidden knowledge, and I wanted to learn. So I started associating and visiting any yoga groups. And when I went to South America, going back to when I met devotees, I was staying at an ashram, which I felt very comfortable because the God, there was no talk of God. It was not religious, you know, and that made me feel very comfortable. So that was my first encounter with devotees. Not very you know, meaningful in terms of talking and exchanging ideas or learning about Krishna, you know. After that, I went back. After all that traveling through South America, I went back to my country, and eventually I had to go back to the United States, and that's when I actually had an opportunity to speak to devotees. I don't know, it's an interesting story. It's a simple story, you know, but I was in a situation where I was trying to fight my bad habits, trying to stop intoxication. And I found myself in a situation where I had to help a brother of mine that was put into jail for something really stupid, and I'm the oldest of 5 boys. So I took up the responsibility to go and get him out of jail. I remember I had to stay with him, and with him, he was doing drugs and doing all these things. I actually couldn't control myself, and I just went back to the bad habits, you know. So one day I remember I was walking to him to a park, and we were intoxicated. And we got to the park, and after a little while, he met his friends, and he just went with his friends. He left me alone. And I was thinking, how crazy, you know, I'm here. I don't want to be here in this city, in this country. And I just came to here to help him. And I don't have anyone else to associate. And he meets his friends. He leaves me alone. And I'm here alone. So I said, I'm just going to walk back to the house. So I started walking back to the house. It was a long walk, maybe like a half an hour walk. And when I'm approaching the center of the city, I had to go through the center of the city. I was so lonely, I said, God, if I could, I didn't say God. Of course, I wasn't thinking of God. I said, if I could only meet a Hare Krishna, I mean, to talk to, you know, something. And as I said that, the Mahamantra started coming to my mind because I was a fanatic of the Beatles. And I really loved My Sweet Lord, that song, although I didn't like the fact that it's praising God, but it was such a nice song, you know. I had no what do you call it? I had to surrender to the fact that I liked it, you know. So I started singing Hare Krishna in my mind. And a minute later, I walked a corner. When I turned a corner, there was a devotee there distributing books.
It was in 70s.
This was in 1970, I think it was 1978, like that, 1978. And there was a devotee distributing books. And he said to me, what do you do for living? I was working temporary job with the Department of Education. I said, well, I'm just working here temporarily. He said, it was a Saturday. And he said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, nothing. I'm here almost like by myself. And he said, can we pick you up and bring you to our center so you can, you know, have vegetarian. I told him I was vegetarian. So he said, we have a nice feast. And I said, I remember, yeah, they have good food. So I said, yeah, of course, you know. So I went to the Sunday feast there. And coming back to the house, they picked me up and dropped me back at the house. They said, so what are you doing next weekend? I said, nothing. They said, can we come and pick you up on Friday? And you can come to the center. It was a preaching center in East Hartford. And I said, yeah. I said, you can spend the weekend with us. How is that? I said, yes, yeah, no problem. So the next Friday, sure enough, the devotees were there to pick me up after work. So I went to the temple and stayed overnight. And the next morning, after the whole morning program, they said, "Come, let's meet with the. I want you to meet the our director here, who was Romapat Brahmachari at the time." And he said, "We want you to meet him." And then I said, "Okay, yeah, sure." So I introduced me to Romapat, and we were talking, and he said to me, "Do you want to visit a temple?" I said, "Well, isn't this a temple?" He said, "No, I mean like a regular temple. This is a preaching center." I said, yeah, of course." He said, "Well, I'm going, in an hour, I'm going to Boston, and you can come with me to the Boston temple." I said, "But I have to be back on Sunday night because I have to work Monday." He said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll arrange it. We'll come back and we'll bring you back." So we went to the Boston temple that afternoon, and and the next morning I got up from Mangal Arti, and it was a huge amount of devotees. Such a nice temple, the deities. It was such an incredible experience, and they said, "Next weekend, do you want to come?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So I joined in 1981 and lived in the temple 8 years straight with my family, and like the second year, in my second year, the day after receiving Brahman initiation, second initiation, my spiritual master, His Holiness Sasarup Das Goswami, he was the GBC, called me to the office and told me that because of circumstances, he asked me to become temple president. And that was very, very shocking to me because for so many reasons. I was fairly new at the temple, and I felt totally unqualified to do the service. But because of circumstances, the temple president at the time had to leave, and I had been working in management with him because I was not a good Sankirtan devotee. I was not good at doing any other things, but I was good helping in the management. And because I knew English, I knew Spanish, so he asked me to become temple president. And I did that for 5 years. It was very challenging, very difficult because I had many of the devotees in the temple were senior to me. I had even some Prabhupada disciples living at the temple at the time. So, but I just, tried to surrender to the service and did it as best as I could. So that was my main service in temple while being in temple life. After that, because we had a child that was already of Gurukul age, and we had no Guru. We tried to do a small Gurukul in Puerto Rico. It did not work out. So we moved to the United States looking for a Gurukul for my child. And from that point on, I was not, a temple devotee. So while being in the temple, I was fully dedicated to the temple. I had no job, just dependent on the temple. But after that time, I just started working and couldn't do full-time service. And after that, basically my service has been helping in management, but doing service as board members of temples and like that, working from the outside with whatever little time one has after working full-time and taking care of family. Yes. So you asked interesting things about life. As a devotee, well, for me, my special highlight in my life has been being able to serve my spiritual master, being a personal servant of His Holiness Sister Rup Das Goswami, since he retired from preaching service or outgoing preaching, because he's always been engaged in preaching through his writing. But since because of health reasons, his senior-most disciples have kind of pushed him and forced him into becoming retired and slowing down because of his headache problems and health problems. So when that happened, for some period of time, I was asked to come and serve him and be like a caretaker for him, and that has been like the highlight in my devotional service, to be with my spiritual master and do personal service. I had the experience and the privilege to help one devotee that joined the temple. He was older than me in age. He joined the temple while I was temple president, and he was one of these persons that gave everything to the temple. He had, so many things, and he just gave everything to the temple and joined and moved in the ashram to live very simply, very poorly. And he took up very nice service. He was a temple treasurer, and he did, a lot for the temple. But at some point, a few years later, he felt like he couldn't stay at the temple, so he left. And years, we kept a connection. He would come to the temple whenever he could, but he was always faithful to his chanting and to Srila Prabhupada. So when he had physical problems, he had like a heart condition, and he refused to take operation for many years. For like 19 years, he struggled with a heart condition. He did not want to have a heart operation. And finally, about 3 years ago, he surrendered. The doctor convinced him. He said, "You have a better quality of life. Really, this is, a complicated operation, but everything is going to be okay." We assured him. And because he was having such a difficult time, living, he just decided to have the operation. But he left his body, so I was like his connection. I was the person that helped him during the process, and that was like a highlight for me. Krishna, the Lord arranged everything. It's a whole nice, interesting story, because I had a very demanding job at the time that I had very little free time. But the day that he left his body, it was a day free for me, and I had made arrangements at the hospital, which was difficult to do, for them to call me whenever he was going to leave his body. So they called me up, and I was able to get there on time, like a half an hour before he left his body. So I was there for him. I had everything I needed. I thought I needed, to help him. In the car, I was ready, So I went out, put tilak, tulsi leaves, tulsi leaves on his mouth, everything, and had Srila Prabhupada chanting, recording, and so it was amazing, because everything, when they called me, at the moment that he was going to leave, the nurses said, "We have a protocol. You have to leave the room. You have to leave the room." And just at that moment, the head doctor of the hospital came, and he said, "No, you get out. Nurses, get out. Leave him with him." And it was so special, that moment, So yeah, that was okay. So in terms of what I'm doing now, I'm just traveling in India, and I'm laughing like this because it might sound very strange that a man as old as I am I'm 65 now, but like half a year ago, I met a god sister of mine who was studying in Mayapur. I was living in Mayapur at that moment, and she was alone. I was alone. We met, we became friends, and short story, we're married now, and she's doing the Bhaktivedanta course in Mayapur. So after we married, we went to the West, visited our families, and now we're back in India. We're recording this in Vrindavan. In 2 days, I'm going to Mayapur, and if the Lord, allows us, we'll have to stay in India for a year and a half for her to finish her courses. That's where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.